Hi there, this is Dylis Guyan, and welcome to the Inspired Selling Podcast, the place where business owners and salespeople who sell to bigger businesses discover how to attract, convert, and keep more of those high-paying clients. And I have got a spectacular guest for you today. I'm really thrilled to have Andy Bounds with us. So let me just tell you a little bit about Andy. He was awarded the title Britain's Sales Trainer of the Year and described by AstraZeneca's Global Communications Director as a genius whose advice can't be ignored. And I have to echo that. What Andy doesn't know actually isn't worth knowing. Andy's insights actually stem from the fact that his mother is blind, and this has given him a lifetime's experience of communicating from someone else's point of view. So very, very critical when seeking to persuade others. And Andy has written 3 books, all are international bestsellers. And in fact, one was only kept off Amazon's top spot by Harry Potter, would you believe? Andy has spoken in more than 35 countries to audiences of all sizes. He's delivered keynotes as at the Professional Speakers Association conference, as well as for blue chip companies, governments, professional bodies, and business experts. And his core belief is this: it's not what you say that counts, it's what people do differently after what you have said. And I absolutely love that. That really resonates with me, Andy. So welcome. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So let's just get straight into it then, Andy. So how did you get into sales? Because I know you were a chartered accountant before you got into the sales arena. So how did you get into sales, and what impact did your mother have on your career?
Okay, so how I got into sales was by total luck, really. As you say, I used to be a chartered accountant, and I used to really like it, actually. But I went to a presentation delivered by a bank once, and it was dire. Oh, Dylis, it was so boring. Yeah. And I thought, why have you been so boring? This is clearly an expensive thing you've done. You've hired the room, all your staff are here, you have potential clients in the room. Why has it been so rubbish? But I thought, never mind, whatever. And then the next week I went to another presentation by another bank, and that was even worse. And I thought, why do people do this? And then it suddenly dawned on me that what I had learned from the earliest age from talking to my mum, who doesn't see at all, she certainly doesn't see the world the way I do, was that I knew how to communicate from people who don't see things like we do. And it suddenly dawned on me, it needed those 2 bank presentations in the same week, which were both dreadful, to suddenly make me realize, oh, this is what most people do. And then after that, I was looking around and I looked at some brochures and I thought, well, that's a bit boring. And then I went to a sales pitch and I thought, that's a bit boring. And so it was all to do with that, really. So Mum had a massive influence because she was the one who taught me how to speak. So therefore, I became good at describing stuff. And here we are.
Brilliant. And sales, of course, is all about inspiring people, isn't it? It's about making it not boring. It's because if you come over in that way, it's not going to move people. It's not going to shift the emotions in people to want to take action and to want to take action with you, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has to be inspiring, but also it has to focus on the other person. And this is something so many companies get wrong. I don't know how many sales pitches I've seen which start with the opening slide saying we were founded in 1922 and here's a map of our offices. Nobody cares. Yes. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. No one cares how old you are. Nobody cares where your offices are based. And then they say, and we were found by the merger of 2 other practices. Nobody cares. I am thinking, I want my company, so I'm the customer, I'm thinking I want my company to go into Belgium. Can you help me get into Belgium? That's all I care about. So start off by saying, you know how you want to get into Belgium, Andy? We can help you do that. But nobody cares about the stuff salespeople normally talk about. Yeah. In effect, put it very simply, what salespeople often do is they talk about themselves and their past. We're founded in 1922 and all that stuff. Customers are interested in the total opposite. They're interested in themselves, not us. Yeah. And they're interested in their future and how we can enhance it, not the salesperson's past.
Exactly. And certainly what I see, particularly in companies with salespeople, is to get this much product training
Mm-hmm.
and history of the company,
Yeah.
and about that much sales training and that much prospecting training,
Yeah.
even if they get that much.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, it's not their fault, because that's how they have been taught and conditioned to think product and to think history of the company and that sort of thing. And of course, the business owners who are selling to bigger businesses, they're expert in the field, expert in their product, or expert in their service. So until they learn the steps, because it's just that really, isn't it? It's learning the steps of how to present yourself and how to be customer focused and so on. So what knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would do differently to sort of to shortcut that learning curve when you very first started?
Well, millions of things, but there are two in particular that jump out. One of them is, you mentioned about prospecting. The easiest person to prospect with is someone who already knows and likes you. So the mistake I made to start with was I thought that prospecting meant talking to strangers. So that meant I might do some cold calling, which I hate, or I might send out emails to people, which I hate. So I thought prospecting was just things that I hated. And then over time, I realized it's much easier to prospect with people who know you. So all I did, and I would advise anyone who wants to generate business, this is the easiest thing to do. Just go down your phone, all the contacts in your phone, and for each one, give each one a mark, A, B, or C, for two things. Firstly, how much they like you. So my mum would have A because she likes me a lot. Someone who didn't really know me or like me very much would be a C. So how much they like you. And secondly, how powerful they are. In other words, how likely they are to be able to give you some business or give you some good recommendations.
Yeah.
So if you go down the list of how much they like you and how powerful they are, in other words, how likely they are to generate money for you, if you do that with every single person you know, you'll find there are some AAs, people who like you a lot, and they actually have quite a lot of power. And then you just ring up the AAs, and they're happy to help because they like you, and they've got the power to help because they've got the power to help.
Yeah.
And I found that was the biggest mistake I made to start with, was that I didn't talk to my existing contacts enough. I almost ignored them, and I went to speak to strangers. That
is so brilliant, so brilliant. And I've been in sales for years and years and years, and never thought about going through my phone and doing it in that way. So that's excellent. So thank you, Andy. I've learned something today. And we never stop learning, of course, do we?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what was the second thing?
The second was, when I get to speak to them, was to use the process which I call ABC. So what I did to start with is I'd go and say, hi, I'm Andy. I didn't say I was founded in 1922, but I nearly did. And it wasn't I was talking too much about myself and my past. And so what ABC stands for is, this is, I find, the best way to sell anything. The A stands for afters. In other words, you start by asking the customer where they want to be after working with you.
Yeah.
So if you are a lawyer, you might say, what's the end game here? If you're an accountant, you might say, so what are your objectives for your company? For me, I might say to a sales team, what would you like to be doing that you're not doing at the minute? So find out the afters, the future happy place they want to be. And you do that with good questioning. The B is build certainty. So once they've said what they want to achieve, you then say, well, I can help you with that because, and then you build certainty by using stories or examples. So they go, oh, you can help me. I like that.
Yeah.
And then C, you've got to close it off. So you have to be able to close the sale. And that is, in a nutshell, much I like to complicate things because it makes me sound cleverer, actually, that's all sales is. Find the afters, build a bit of certainty, close it off, and you're fine.
Yeah. And this finding the afters, that's great, isn't it, in terms of getting people to create their own vision.
Yeah.
When you're talking about those afters, and they can feel that and see that, and they're selling to themselves, because great selling is, as you know, it's about taking someone on that journey. It's not pushing, forcing, or any of those nasty sales tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all to do with good questioning. I have never met a brilliant salesperson who isn't brilliant at asking questions. Okay, so there's too many negatives there. All good salespeople ask good questions. Another piece of homework for anyone watching this. So one piece of homework: look at your phone contacts, like we said before, and grade them all with power and love. Another piece of homework is just spend 20 minutes coming up with 3 or 4 really good questions to find out a customer's desired future. Most people don't do this, so most people just ask the questions they were given on their induction course, which are probably a bit weak, really. Or you just ask questions you asked last week, which might be okay, they might not be good. But just spend 20 minutes with a cup of tea and just write down some really good questions you can ask to find the other person's desired future.
And what it would mean to them.
Yeah.
And understanding particularly if you're selling to companies, it's not just benefits to the company, it's benefits to the individual too. So you've got that kind of double whammy thing going on, haven't you? Yeah. So let's just go back to the beginning of your day then. So are you one of these people who has a daily routine? And if you do, would you share that with us? If you don't, what have you done it?
Yeah, so I do have a daily routine. The most useful thing I do in my life, it sounds quite boring this, but I find it super helpful, is at the end of each day, I always look through every single thing that I've done during the day, and I do all my follow-up there and then. Right. So if I've, say, delivered a sales workshop during the day, I might have to send the slides to everyone who came. I might have got some follow-up materials I've created. I send that through. I might have arranged with the sales director, I'm going to speak to her next week to ask how everything was. So I put a reminder in my diary to make sure I do that. I might have another reminder 2 or 3 weeks later, just so I can check in saying, is everything still going okay? So every single thing I do at the end of that day, I either do the follow-up now or I put it in the diary to do it at a later date, which means, it doesn't sound very interesting, but it means I never, ever forget anything, like ever. So I'm always following up. I'm always super efficient. I don't want my clients to follow up for me. I'd rather to be in control of that. So I say to the client, I'll say, well, I'm happy to take the action to do all the follow up. And they say, oh, that's charming, Andy. But it's because I want to have a bit of control. So that's the most useful thing, actually. It's not sexy, but my word, it's useful. Another thing I do is during the week, I have a diary entry, which is planning ahead. Right. So what I do is I look at all my meetings that are coming up next week and I make sure I do my planning for them. So that might just be send a little email, looking forward to seeing you next week. Is there anything you want me to prepare or bring with me? It could be jumping on the phone to do stuff. It might be actually creating some material. But I used to not have this plan ahead in the diary. And then sometimes I didn't get time to plan ahead. Yeah. So now I always have time to plan ahead because it's in the diary. It's funny that.
Yeah.
And the only one other thing which I do, so my diary is quite empty apart from these things, and the only other thing I do is I have in the diary is a time to ask for a referral. So in my diary, I have one diary entry a week which says, ask for a referral now, Andy. And I don't care if I get the referral or not, because people can say no, people can say yes. I don't care about that, but I do care that I ask. Because it's in the diary, that means this year I'm going to ask for about 50 referrals. I'll probably get about 20, 30. Last year I asked for 50, the year before I asked for 50, the year before I asked for 50. Do the maths, that's where my business comes from. Yeah.
So when you've got that entry in your diary and then you go through and say, right, who have I spoken to or who do I need to speak to today to ask for that referral?
That's right.
So you ask a specific person?
Yeah, ask a specific person always, yeah.
Brilliant. And how do you ask, Andy?
So I have a script which I find works really very well indeed. So here it is. I say, so to someone who has already benefited from using me or knows of my stuff, I'll say something like, do you mind if I ask your advice about something? And they say, what is it? And I say, well, I see on LinkedIn or wherever that you happen to know person X. That's the person I want to speak to. So I say on LinkedIn that you know person X. And this is what I could do with your advice, because I'd love to speak to them, but I don't want to cold call them. What would you advise I do? And so I don't say, give me a referral. I just say, I see you know person X. I want to speak to them, but I don't want to cold call. What would you advise I do? People give me one or two answers. Either they say, well, I'll introduce you if you like. That's a referral. Or they often say, well, just email them. And if they say just email them, I say, okay, happy to do that. Would you mind if I included your name in that email just so they know that I know them through you? And they always go, oh, that's fine.
Yes.
So that means that they never feel put on the spot to ask for a referral, because I don't say with a begging bowl, give me a referral. I just say, like, how would you advise I approach them? And I find that works dead well.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And, you know, and we've all got our sort of ways of doing things, haven't we? But that little extra bit of saying, could you give, what would you advise me to do?
Yeah.
It just makes the difference, doesn't it? Fantastic. Brilliant. So I don't know whether you know this actually, but I used to work with, when I used to be the regional sales director at Barclays Financial Services, and I left and set up my own consultancy back in 2000 and started working with large corporates.
Yeah.
And it was with the big international corporates and working with the sales teams and the sales leaders. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was so shattered with the travelling, I decided I was going to change my business model and bring my skills to the SME market, who are selling to bigger businesses but haven't got a sales and marketing department or a training department, and maybe just a small sales team. And so working with this demographic, what I have found is that many, not all, but many will be selling to smaller companies. And I'm trying to encourage them to sell to bigger companies who've got bigger budgets, who will pay on time, who are a joy to work with, who you can get additional business with, and so on. So what are your thoughts around that? Why do you think that they should consider selling to bigger businesses?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the main thing to do is I think organisations should sell to who they feel most comfortable selling to, and also the ones that are going to most likely to generate the right sort of work. Almost always it's easier to sell to someone who, if they're going to give you money, it's coming out of the business's bank account, if you like. Whereas if you sell to me personally, if I give you any money, it's basically coming out of my children's holiday fund.
Yes.
So my question is not, do I think you could bring me business or not? My question is, do I think what I'm going to pay you is better than me saying to the children, well, we can't do Disney again this year. So I would much prefer to sell to someone where it's not particularly their money. I prefer working with larger organisations, partly because of the budget, but I also like, because I do a lot of work with communication, and there's a lot of huge challenges with huge organisations and their communication. So I like doing that as well.
Yeah.
But the key thing to remember is when you're looking to get new customers, you've got to think, number one, do they see the need for what you sell? And number two, very importantly, are they happy to give you money for it?
Yes.
You know? So, for example, my children might like the thought of getting chocolate-flavoured toothpaste. They might think that's really good, but actually, no parent's ever going to buy that and give money for it. So just because it's a nice idea, it doesn't mean that money's going to be transferred. So that's who your target market should be.
Yeah. And I just, there's so many smaller businesses who I see struggling with the peaks and troughs of cash flow.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons is that they're selling to smaller companies and they're getting small jobs, but they're not getting enough small jobs anyway.
Yeah.
And so they're not getting this consistency of work coming in. So what are your thoughts around that in terms of people making sure that they've got a full pipeline?
Right. Well, two things really. Firstly, do that thing I said before about go through your phone contacts. Make sure you've spoken to everyone who it's easy to speak to. I mean, it's hard enough speaking to strangers, so you might as well speak to people who like you.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and this sounds really obvious, really, is change your pricing structure. So let me just run through this a bit, because many people price based on time. So they say it's if you want an hour of me coaching, it's going to be this amount of money. And if you want 3 hours, it's going to be 3 times the amount. So straight away, what happens is both you and the customer can be in a bit of conflict as to, well, should we charge? Because the customer says, I think I only need 1 session. And you say, I think you need 3. And you go, no, I think it's really 1. We'll do 1 and I might pay for another one afterwards.
Yeah.
And because everyone talks about time, you're much better off saying to the customer, well, I can definitely help you with this. And based on what we've just talked about, it should bring you this sort of amount of value. My price for doing it is only this. When do you want to start?
Yeah.
So you don't say it's going to be 3 hours work for this price. You just say it's going to be this price, but you base the price based on the value you're giving rather than the number of hours it's going to take you. One of my best friends, I've been talking with him about this recently, and he would say to someone, what work do you want doing? He's a clever IT guy. And he'd go and work out exactly how many hours it would be. Then he'd go back and he'd say, it's going to be about 2 days work, and I charge about £650 a day. Therefore, it's going to be 1,300 quid. And the client would always say, oh, can't you just do it in a day and a half?
Yeah.
I said to him, stop mentioning days. Just go away and come back and say, I can help you. It's going to cost 1,300 quid. And so just changing that means that you stop focusing on the time and you focus more on the value you're going to give the client. And the great thing is, if you're not focusing on time anymore, all of a sudden you have a bit more time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also worth looking at that, at the kind of bigger picture of what you can do. So it's not just this bit.
Yeah.
Because you might want to do some follow-on coaching.
Yeah.
Or some one-to-one, or I often find, it hasn't been always, but very often, that I'll do work with the sales team and then I work with the leaders.
Yeah.
Because if the leaders don't know what the sales team have learned, it's harder for them then to embed that learning that the salespeople.
Well, it won't work.
Yeah.
But the great thing you're saying there is you could, and you always should offer the customer options. So you don't say to the customer, I can help you by doing X. Do you want it or not? Because they could say not. You said, the good news is there's 2 ways I can help you. I could do X, which costs this amount. Or if you want, I could do Y, which costs this amount. Which do you want? And then you're saying to the customer, which of these two sounds better? And what you often find with customers is they often want the more expensive one because, yes, it is more expensive, but it's way more valuable and they're looking for value.
Yeah, yeah. And people don't always value themselves enough to put their prices up. You were talking about the pricing. I met a guy just at the weekend, in fact, in Burford, near where I live, from America. And to cut a very long story short, he was called Steve Hardison. Mm-hmm. He took his shoe and sock off, and he's got his toenails painted black with this exclamation mark on. This
there you go.
In the middle of the street. I gave him my card, and of course I got on international sales marketing leader, coach and speaker, and he nearly went inside out. And he said, oh my God, I must give you a book. And I didn't intend to share all of this, but this is the book. And he is the last kind of, he's marked it. Maybe it doesn't matter, but he marked it like this for me.
Right.
And this book is going to be made into film, and Matthew McConaughey, I think I've pronounced that right, is going to play him in this film. So he's telling me,
cool.
Working with this lady, helping her, and she was a drug addict and so on, and he'd helped her as a coach. He said, and I charge 200,000 to $1 million a year for my coaching. And I was thinking, now, there is an example of somebody, because there isn't that much more to know in coaching, really, is there?
No.
And there's somebody who values himself to such an extent that he is charging 200,000 to $1 million a year, and they travel to Arizona. He said, I don't do any of this tech stuff online. It was just amazing. So he's asked me to get in touch with him on his website, so I haven't had a minute this week, but I'm going to get in touch with him and he's going to send me some kind of online thing. But I'm just sharing that in terms of valuing yourself, because he obviously feels and knows that he brings massive value to his clients. And then through that, he's, as you said, he's obviously getting referrals as well onto that kind of person, you know. I had to just share that with you. You can just imagine this on Burford High Street, him taking his shoe and his sock off. So what is the best advice to business owners or entrepreneurs to improve their success rates in terms of selling?
Okay, so on top of the things we've already talked about, spend more time with your existing customers. That is dead easy. I have a little 3H's conversation with each of my customers all the time. The first H is hot priorities. So what you're working on at the minute, what your main priorities, and they tell me. And then my second H is, how can I help you with those? And they will often say, well, could you do this? And that's what we call a sale. So that's all good. And then they often say, I don't really know, Andy. And then my third H comes out, which is, well, how about?
Right.
And then how about this? Let me go and have a think about how I might be able to help, and I can come back to you. So let me run through those 3 H's again, because they're dead easy. Customers always love it. So what are your hot priorities? So what you're working on at the minute? How do you think I can help you with them? Well, how about this? Let me go and have a think about it, and I'll come back. How would that be? Now, what happens is if you have these 3 H's conversations with your customers all the time, firstly, customers will talk to you because they already like you. Secondly, you're offering more value because you're talking about the hot priorities. And thirdly, you're not selling to them because you just say, you're not being horrible. You're just saying, how can I help? I don't know. And then even with the how about, you're not saying, let me go and do a sales pitch. You say, let me have a think about it. Would that be all right? I might have something that can help you. And so little things like that are really, really easy to do. And what I tend to find is that 2 wonderful things happen if I do the 3 H's. Either my existing customers might buy something else, which is great for me and it's great for them because I'm helping them more. Or what they do is I say, well, I can't really help you, but I'll just keep thinking about it. And they always say, thank you, because none of my other suppliers ask questions like that. Yeah. So I look like a real value adding supplier because I am. So I'm not just doing it to try and line my pocket. I'm trying to help them too. Yes. And so that is the easiest way to generate more value for your clients and more fees for you.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Any other little pearls before you share your contact details?
Let's think of other pearls. To be honest, the one I said before is probably the most important one, which is, it just sounds so boring, and that is change your diary a bit. So as I said before, I have in my diary every week to make sure that I ask for a referral. I also have in my diary to make sure I do the 3 H's conversation. And so what many people tell me, Dylis, is they say, I just don't have time to do this. You know, I understand what you're saying, Andy, and your 3 H's is very clever. You must be very proud of yourself, but I just don't have time to do it. And I say, but the reason you don't have time is because it's not in your diary. Yeah. So if I could just impress on everyone watching this, just if you're going to do just one thing, please just do this one thing. Put a new diary entry in, I don't know, every Thursday morning for 20 minutes, and it says, ask for a referral, or have a 3 H's conversation, or if for you it's cold calling, make 3 cold calls. Just have this recurring diary entry, because if things are in your diary, you've got time to do it. And if they're not in the diary, you haven't got time to do it because your diary's full of other stuff.
Yes.
So it is not at all sexy, but actually it is the discipline and the diligence you need if you want your business to grow.
Fantastic. Oh my God, Andy, I wish you could just be here in my office. You have lit my fire. I'm absolutely buzzing. You're an inspiration, and I can understand why that guy at AstraZeneca's global communication director said, you're a genius whose advice can't be ignored. You are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. So how can people get in touch with you?
So a couple of ways. So anyone who wants to learn from my stuff, I have some online videos. That's just andyboundsonline.com. So all one word, andyboundsonline.com. If anyone wants to go to my website, that's just andybounds.com. Or to be honest, they can just send me an email, which is andy@andybounds.com. So it's very easy to get through to me. So I'll give you those 3 again. Andy Bounds Online is the videos. The andybounds.com is the website. But if you just want to email me, anyone's very welcome. It's always me who answers. I don't ever get anyone doing my correspondence for me. I'm not royalty, you know. So if anyone's got any questions, it's just andy@andybounds.com.
Brilliant, brilliant. Andy, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming and sharing your time and sharing these nuggets of gold for my audience. I can't thank you enough.
No, you're very welcome. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. What a fantastic guest from Andy Bounds. The gold dust that he shares is just so brilliant. So let me just cover a couple of the things that he said. I've jotted down some notes, scribbled to one side without even looking. So let me see if I can read them. Prospect with people that you know. Go through your phone and mark them A, B, and C, and you know how much they like you, A, B, and C, and how much power have you got in terms of being able to introduce you to people. Do your process, your ABC process, so the after and the building certainty with them by talking about stories, sharing stories, and then close to actually close that. It's not just as simple as that, of course, but that's your outline process, which is brilliant. What are these 3 H's? What are your hot topics? How might I help you? And let's just go and have a think about how I might help you. Just fantastic. So if you would like to tune into more of these interviews, then please just go on to actually, first of all, come and join my group, Inspired Selling, on Facebook. It's a free closed group. But in there, you know, you can ask questions, you can collaborate, you can mix with like-minded people. And a mentor of mine once said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what my intention is for this group. And of course, go to YouTube and subscribe. Look for Dylis Guyan on YouTube and subscribe to the videos. And you'll not miss any of these nuggets to help you with your sales. So have a wonderful time selling, helping people to achieve their objectives, meet their, overcome their problems, and help them to make their businesses better. So for now, thank you, and thank you for listening. Bye for now.